Some age gaps don't begin with excitement, they begin with hesitation. Not because of what she said, but because of the conversation you immediately started having with yourself. Why would someone her age be interested in me? Then another thought quietly follows. How long until she realizes I'm not who she imagined? Very few men admit those thoughts out loud. They smile, they joke about feeling young again. But underneath that confidence, many are carrying a question that keeps returning in quiet moments. If this kind of conversation interests you, subscribe before you forget. There are some feelings men spend years trying to explain, and sometimes understanding them changes more than advice ever could. Something interesting happens when you're with someone much younger. People assume the biggest challenge will be the years between you. Often, it isn't. The real distance is invisible. It's made of different memories, different fears, different expectations about love. Imagine the two of you sitting in a restaurant. She's laughing about something that happened at work. You're smiling because you enjoy watching her excitement more than the story itself. Then she casually mentions a trend you've never heard of. You mention a movie that shaped your 20s. She smiles politely. Neither of you says anything. It seems small. It is small. But little moments like that slowly collect inside both people. Not as problems, as reminders. Reminders that your lives didn't start on the same page. And strangely, that isn't always what creates insecurity. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes the older partner begins trying too hard to erase the difference. He starts changing the music he listens to, the clothes he wears, the jokes he tells. He laughs a little louder, stays out a little later, pretends his knees don't hurt after climbing the stairs. Not because she asked him to, because he quietly worries that being himself might someday stop being enough. Most people never notice when this begins. Neither does he. It feels harmless, even romantic. Until one evening he catches himself agreeing with something he doesn't even believe, just to avoid looking old. That moment passes in seconds, but something inside him notices. And once you start negotiating small pieces of yourself, it becomes surprisingly easy to keep going. There's another side to this that almost nobody talks about. The younger partner may be doing something just as exhausting. She may start editing herself too, not because she's pretending, because she doesn't want to seem immature. She thinks twice before sharing certain dreams. She wonders whether some of her excitement will sound childish. She apologizes for not knowing things you consider obvious. Without realizing it, both people begin protecting each other from judgment that may not even exist. It's a quiet performance. And performances can feel a lot like intimacy, until one unexpected conversation reveals that neither person has really been showing up as themselves. That conversation rarely starts with an argument. It usually begins with something ordinary, a weekend plan, a question about the future, a joke that lands differently than expected. She says, "I don't really think that far ahead." You pause, not because the words are wrong, because 10 years ago, you might have said exactly the same thing. It's strange how age changes the meaning of a sentence. The younger person often hears possibility. The older person sometimes hears uncertainty. Neither interpretation is wrong. They're just coming from different places. And if you're not careful, you'll start responding to what you imagine she means instead of what she actually said. I've watched this happen more times than people realize. A man hears hesitation and secretly translates it into rejection. A woman notices his sudden distance and assumes she's disappointed him. Neither one is lying. Neither one understands the story the other is creating in silence. That's how emotional distance often begins. Not with betrayal, with interpretation. There is another moment that deserves more attention. It's the first time you realize she sees the world without carrying some of the disappointments you've learned to expect. Maybe she trusts people more easily. Maybe she believes problems can be solved with one honest conversation. Maybe she falls asleep 5 minutes after an argument while you're still replaying every sentence at 2 in the morning. At first, it can feel refreshing. Her optimism reminds you of a version of yourself you haven't seen in years. You find yourself laughing more, trying things you hadn't considered, feeling lighter. Then, almost without warning, something shifts. You start wondering whether she's simply hopeful, or whether she hasn't yet experienced the losses that taught you to be careful. That's a dangerous place to live emotionally. Because experience can quietly disguise itself as wisdom. Sometimes it is wisdom. Sometimes it's just fear wearing an older face. The difficult part is telling the difference. Not every caution is maturity. Not every risk is immaturity. Many relationships become trapped right there. One person thinks, "You'll understand when you're older." The other quietly thinks, "Maybe you've forgotten how to live." Neither sentence is spoken, but both begin shaping every conversation afterward. Then something unexpected happens. The younger partner may start feeling constantly evaluated, even when no criticism is intended. She notices you explaining things she already knows, finishing her thoughts, giving advice before she's asked. You believe you're helping. She begins wondering if you actually see her, or only the age you imagine. And that question is heavier than it sounds, because everyone wants to feel respected before they feel loved. There's another layer beneath this that catches many couples by surprise. It has nothing to do with birthdays, and everything to do with the version of yourself you become when you're afraid the relationship matters more than you're willing to admit. There comes a moment when you stop thinking about the age gap and start thinking about what you could lose. That's when everything feels different. Before that, the relationship can feel exciting, unexpected, almost like life handed you a chapter you weren't expecting to read. Then one evening she's late replying to a message. Not hours, maybe just long enough for your mind to begin filling in the blanks. You tell yourself you're being reasonable. She's probably busy. And maybe she is. But another voice slips in. People her age have so many options. You don't like that thought. It doesn't sound like you. Yet there it is, waiting. What's interesting is that this fear isn't always about her. Sometimes it's about time. You become aware of it in small, ordinary moments. She talks about places she wants to travel. You silently calculate how old you'll be when those trips happen. She mentions learning something new. You wonder if you'll still have the same energy. She dreams in decades. You find yourself measuring years. It's an uncomfortable realization because it doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives quietly, almost politely. And for many men, it's the first time they realize they aren't competing with another man. They're competing with an imagined future. That's a competition no one ever truly wins. But that's not even the part that changes people the most. The deeper shift happens inside your identity. You may begin asking questions that have nothing to do with the relationship itself. Am I becoming boring? Have I stopped growing? When did I start believing my best years were behind me? Notice something important. Those questions could have appeared even if you'd never met her. She didn't create them. She simply stood in front of a mirror you hadn't looked into for a long time. That can feel unsettling. It can also become one of the most honest opportunities for growth. Because there are two ways to respond. One is to chase youth, to copy trends you don't enjoy, to force yourself into conversations that leave you feeling like a guest in someone else's life. From the outside, it can look confident. Inside, it's exhausting. The other path is quieter. You stay curious instead of pretending. You ask questions without embarrassment. You introduce her to parts of your world without expecting her to love all of them. Something remarkable often happens then. Real connection starts replacing performance. She isn't looking at a man trying to be 25. She's getting to know a man who is comfortable being exactly where he is. That kind of confidence rarely announces itself. It doesn't need to. People feel it. And ironically, it's often far more attractive than any attempt to erase the years. Still, even when both people are genuine, another challenge slowly appears. Not because they love each other less, because love alone doesn't answer one question that eventually finds almost every relationship with a large age gap. And when that question arrives, avoiding it usually costs more than facing it. The question isn't, do you love each other enough? Most couples answer that one fairly quickly. The harder question sounds much quieter. Are we walking toward the same future? Or just enjoying the same present? Those are not the same thing, and people often discover the difference long after they've become deeply attached. Picture the two of you driving home after a good evening together. The music is low, the conversation slows. She casually says, I've always imagined living in another country for a few years. You look out the window. You don't answer right away. Not because you disagree, because your mind has already jumped ahead. Your career, your family, your routines, the life you've spent years building. She isn't asking you to choose, she's simply sharing a dream. But dreams have a way of revealing priorities before either person is ready. This is where many couples make an understandable mistake. They avoid the conversation. Not out of dishonesty, out of kindness. They don't want to spoil what's good. So they tell themselves, we'll figure it out later. Sometimes that works. Sometimes later arrives carrying much heavier emotions. Because every postponed conversation quietly keeps growing. Not louder, just heavier. I've noticed something else too. When there's a significant age gap, people outside the relationship often become unexpected voices inside it. A friend makes a joke. A stranger stares a little too long. Someone asks an innocent question that somehow lingers for days. What do you two even talk about? You laugh it off. She laughs too. Then, lying awake that night, you hear the question again. Not because you believe it, because you wonder if she does. It's remarkable how easily outside opinions can become private insecurities, especially when they touch fears you already had. This doesn't mean the relationship is weak. It means you're human. We're all influenced, at least a little, by the stories other people tell about us. The important part is noticing when you're living your relationship and when you're defending it. Those are very different experiences. One brings closeness, the other slowly steals it. There's another quiet habit that can either strengthen or weaken everything between you. It's how you respond when your differences become visible. Some couples treat every difference like evidence that they're incompatible. Others become curious. Instead of saying, "You don't understand me," they ask, "Help me understand how you see this." That single shift changes the emotional atmosphere. No one has to win. No one has to be older, or younger, or wiser. They only have to stay interested in each other. And that sounds simple, until life becomes busy, until stress arrives, until disappointment slips into ordinary conversations. Because in those moments, people stop asking questions. They start making assumptions, and assumptions have ended more promising relationships than age ever has. The strange part is that the strongest couples I've observed weren't the ones who had the fewest differences. They were the ones who never stopped being curious about the person sitting across from them. And that curiosity leads to one final realization, one that many people don't discover until they're on the edge of losing something they thought would always be there. It's easy to believe the biggest test of a relationship with a 20-year age gap will come from the outside. The comments, the raised eyebrows, the questions nobody knows how to answer politely. Sometimes those things hurt, but they rarely decide the future. The quieter danger is something else. It's the day you stop seeing each other as people and start seeing each other as ages. You become the older one. She becomes the younger one. Without realizing it, every disagreement gets filtered through those labels. If you're cautious, it must be because you're older. If she's excited, it must be because she's younger. Life becomes easier to explain, but much harder to understand. Because people are always more complicated than the number on their birthday. Think back to the beginning. What drew you toward her? Chances are, it wasn't a number. Maybe it was the way she laughed without worrying who was listening. Maybe it was how curious she was about ordinary things. Maybe it was the calm she brought into your day when everything else felt noisy. And if you asked her, she probably wouldn't describe your age first either. She might remember how safe she felt talking to you, how carefully you listened, how you didn't rush to impress her. Those are human qualities, not age-related ones. That's worth remembering when the relationship becomes difficult, because it will. Not necessarily because of the years between you. Every meaningful relationship eventually asks something of the people inside it. Patience, honesty, forgiveness, the courage to say, "I was wrong," the humility to admit, "I don't know." Those moments don't care whether you're 25 or 55. They ask the same thing from everyone. There is one thought I'd like to leave you with. If you spend every day trying to prove that the age gap doesn't matter, you may never fully enjoy the person standing beside you. You'll always be performing, always watching yourself, always wondering if you're enough. But when you stop trying to erase the difference, something surprisingly peaceful can happen. You stop treating the relationship like an exception that needs defending. You start treating it like a relationship. One built on conversations that are honest instead of perfect, on respect instead of assumptions, on curiosity instead of fear. Will that guarantee it lasts? No. No relationship comes with that promise. Sometimes people grow together. Sometimes they grow in different directions. Age can influence those paths, but it doesn't write them. Character does. Communication does. The willingness to keep learning about the person you love does. And perhaps that's what no one tells you about dating someone 20 years younger. The age gap is rarely the deepest question. The deeper question is whether both of you can keep choosing authenticity over performance, even after the excitement fades. Because in the end, people don't stay where they feel the youngest. They stay where they feel genuinely seen.